Okay, it's day 66, quadratic equations by factoring. This lesson is something that you've been taught in Algebra 1. I taught you about factoring a few weeks ago. I retaught you. It's because there's a bunch of different equations. I want you to see the similarities between them in math, because once you see the similarities, it'll be a lot easier. So we looked at linear, we looked at absolute value, now we're looking at quadratic. So factoring is a big word from before. Turn to your neighbors, help them remember, what does factoring mean? And here's your hints with my fingers. What does factoring mean? Okay, what does factoring mean, everyone? Break apart. Good. So like in math, when we multiply things, let's say I multiplied 4 times 5, what do I get? 20, right? How do I factor 20? I could just break it apart as 4 times 5, right? Would you agree? Is that the only way I could break it apart? No, I could do 1 times 20, I could do 2 times 10. Okay? So today we're going to solve by factoring. Alright, so these are the steps. If you're in a video, you should pause it. Here we go, numbers 1 and 2 guys up here. So this has been taught to you in Algebra 1. So we have solve here, okay? We could solve anything in math, but when we see this, we have to figure out what are we solving for. So on this problem, I think about what's the variable I'm looking at. There's an x here, and then what's happening to the x. So look at what's the biggest exponent. What's happening? It's x squared. Good. I'll talk on this one. Thank you, sir. Okay. So x squared. So then I know it's quadratic, which means it's going to look like a U. Okay. So I kind of have an idea. But I want to figure out what's the solution. So the first thing I want to do is, I notice it's x squared and it's in a trinomial, which is nice. So, and then 0, or the trinomial is isolated because you have a 0 on one side. Okay, so since that's the case, I'm going to have to ask myself, how do I solve for this? So I think about from before, I could factor it. So this is from a couple weeks ago, or actually about a month and a half ago, I taught you about factoring, or retaught it. So I'm going to multiply the first and the last term. X squared times 12 is 12x squared, okay? And we're going to write down x squared, positive 12, is equal to 0. And then I think to myself, what times what is going to be equal to 12x squared, but adds up to negative 7x? It's going to be negative 3x and negative 4x, okay? And I'm going to put parentheses around this as factor by grouping. Remember doing this? Yes? Okay, what can I factor out of here? It's an x. I can factor an x from this first binomial. So we got x minus 3 times, and then over here I could factor out a negative 4. So you got x minus 3 again. Bring down my equal to 0. And then I'm thinking, what can I factor out of each of these terms? Well, x minus 3, right? So we got x minus 3 times x minus 4 is equal to 0. Now I have two binomials being multiplied to each other equal to 0. There's a multiply sign here, so I need to figure out what the answer is here. So we got x minus 3 and x minus 4. I want to focus on this first x here. So how do I isolate it? I need to divide it by anything that's around it. So I'm going to divide both sides by x minus 4. Okay. When I do that, I get x minus 4 divided by x minus 4 is 1, right? Or it cancels out, we say. Well, actually, it's just 1. So x minus 3 times 1 is x minus 3. And then bring down the rest of the problem. 0 divided by anything is still 0. Add 3 to both sides. You got x is equal to 3. Okay, that's one of my answers. But I know that there was x minus 3 times x minus 4. So this step right here, I'm going to have to rewrite it. I'll use a different color, just so you can see that this is done again. And instead of focusing on this first x, this time I'm going to focus on this x right here, dividing both sides by x minus 3, and divide this side by x minus 3 also, because I'm trying to isolate this x right here, right? So when I do that, these two, x minus 3 divided by x minus 3 becomes 1. 1 times x minus 4 is x minus 4 is equal to 0 divided by that is still 0. Add 4 to both sides, you get x is equal to 4. Okay? And there are your two answers. So these are the two solutions. Alright? So you'll notice that I'm using factoring from before, right? You all remembering that factoring lesson or those lessons I gave you a few weeks back? Yes? Okay? So that's one thing. The other thing you're going to notice, it's quadratic. You see how it's x squared? So since the biggest exponent is 2, how many answers do I have? 2. You see that? 2 answers. You all get that? Okay. The other thing you're going to notice here is that, do you see how I have this big messy part right here? You see this big messy part? Both sides? Okay. There's this thing called the zero product property, and I'm going to show you how to do this messy part very quickly using the zero product property, okay? Because we're kind of doing extra work, and we don't need to. We can make an assumption using the zero product property then. Okay, so watch me do number 2. Okay, number 2 again. We're going to solve. That's the directions. We've got x squared minus 6x plus 5 is equal to negative 4. I'm asking myself, I have to solve this, so how do I solve this? I think, what's the largest exponent here? What's the largest exponent, everyone? X squared, so it has to be quadratic, and there has to be 2 answers here, okay? So I want to isolate the x squared term, so we got to add 4 to both sides first. So we got x squared minus 6x plus 9 is equal to 0. Okay? Now we've isolated it. Now I could use, I could factor this trinomial. So we got x squared times positive 9 is positive 9x squared. Then I ask myself, what times what is going to equal to 9x squared but add up to negative 6x? Okay, negative 3 and negative 3, good. So bringing the rest of the problem down, and I'm going to put negative 3x, negative 3x, right? These are my 2 factors I'm adding. Okay, and I'm going to group these up. So we got x, we could factor out an x here, x times x minus 3. We could factor out a negative 3 here. So x minus 3 here, which is all equal to 0. I could factor out x minus 3 again, times x minus 3, right, is equal to 0. Now we're at a point that I could use the zero product property. So the zero product property, instead of doing this big messy step, watch this. I'm going to take each of my factors, this is a factor here, x minus 3, and bring it down and equal to 0. And then I'm going to take the second x minus 3, bring it down, make it equal to 0. This first one I could add 3 to both sides. The yellow equation, we know x is equal to 3 here. And the second one, the blue equation, we could add 3 to both sides, so x is equal to 3 also here. So I got 2 answers, right? But what do you notice about both my answers? They're the same answer. So there's really only one answer, but it's showing up twice, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, raise your hand if you remember this from before, from your Algebra 1 teacher or from me. Okay, you should all remember this. We're going through this very quickly because I wanted to remind you of it so we know of it, okay? Questions on numbers 1 or 2? Okay, so let's hear you do some math chatting. 1's in each group. That's how you talk about number 1. Really take advantage of the talking about the problem. Everyone else is listening and discussing, and then 2's we'll talk about number 2. Okay? Ready? Set. Okay, let's do a couple of these. Let's do number 3, okay? In your groups, let's make this group work, okay? Discussing, working together on number 3, r squared minus 2r minus 15. I'll give you 2 minutes to find the answers, or to find the solutions here. And just to get everyone going, I got a question for you. What's the largest exponent in this problem? R squared, right? So that means how many solutions should I have? 2 solutions. Y'all get that? Okay. Go.
5 is equal to 5 and negative 3.
R is equal to negative 5 and what?
5
Okay, so let's see if you're right, okay? Because I heard -5 and 3, and then I heard 5 and -3. You have to get the right answer. You can't just put 5 or -5. It has to be specific, okay? So on this one, you should have factored it out. It should have looked like following. We got r minus 5r plus 3r minus 15 is equal to 0. Factor by grouping here. Oh yeah, r squared, thank you. So we take out an r here, times r minus 5, plus 3 times r minus 5 is equal to 0. And then you should get r minus 5 times r plus 3 is equal to 0. Zero product property, you got r minus 5 equals 0, and then you got r plus 3 equals 0. So r is equal to 5, and r is equal to -3. Okay? Some of you said -5. Is -5 a correct answer? No. Did you get it? Yes, sir.
At the top where it's r squared minus 5, can you put the -5r in the other parentheses? Or is
Yep, you could do that. It would still be the same answer. Does this make sense? Raise your hand if you made a silly mistake on this one. Okay, some people did, okay? Good. That's okay. We want to make mistakes so we learn from them. Next one. Number 4. We got n squared minus 16 equals 0. Okay, so what term is missing here? What's wrong?
I did number 3 a different way, but I still got the same answer.
What did you do?
I just did r minus 5, and I just did like the whole, like that. And I got it quicker, and I got the same answer.
Okay, let me look at it, because sometimes we do it wrong and we get the right answer, because we accidentally got the right answer. And then, which means that I hope you know what you're doing. Now, if you did it differently and it's consistently you get the right answer, that's good. But if you get the right answer by accident, then that's not good. Okay, so everyone's working on number 4. Is there n to the first power? We have n squared, and then we got -16. Do we have something in the middle here? Now we could put 0n here, right? Sure we can. It's just 0, right? That looks really messy. Let me clean this up a little bit. Okay, eyes up here. N squared times -16 is? -16n squared. What times what is going to be equal to -16n squared but add up to 0n?
-4 and 4.
-4n and +4n, right? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. What are my 2 answers? Working with your group. Good, 4 and -4, right? If you were to factor these, factor by grouping, right? We're going to take out an n here. You got n plus 4 times, we got to factor out a -4. N plus 4 again is equal to 0. So you got n minus 4 times n plus 4 is equal to 0. Zero product property. You got n minus 4 equals 0. And over here we got n plus 4 equals 0. So n is equal to 4. And n is equal to -4. Make sense? Yes? Okay, again, these are, these should go pretty quickly, okay? Let's have you do one more. I think we're going to be done, okay? Let's have you just do number 6, okay? That's it. Solve. Okay, so -4 and -2, let's see if you're right. So I would have added 2 to both sides, so you got k squared plus 6k plus 8 is equal to 0, and then when you factor, you should get k plus 4 times k plus 2, right? Now, some of these you could do in your head. You don't have to do all these extra steps. And, of course, when you work this out, this one's going to become k is equal to negative 4. And this one's going to be k is equal to negative 2. Okay, I'm skipping a lot of steps there, right? Do y'all see the process I went through, though? Okay, so this is all review from before. Those are your two answers, okay? That concludes the lesson. That's the big idea. Is how do we solve for factoring? This is how you do it on paper, okay? Now, I want you to think about the answers. Hopefully you wrote that last one down. That concludes the lesson, so I'd like you to discuss these.